About. Hey, welcome back to The Question, a Blog Talk Radio conversation with Doug Pagitt and Tony Jones. Tony Jones is a religion commentator and theologian, and we're talking about the latest things going on in the news today. This is June 2nd edition of The Question in our final 15-minute installment. Well, there was a little flurry, huh? Around the
yeah, I mean the pushback.
Thank you, Bruce. We appreciate the good radio.
I think
Bruce Reyes Chow is with us. Bruce, you have to call in. We'd appreciate your vantage point on this. 646-929-1199.
Look, here's what the purveyors of the wrath-filled theology that you've just condemned would respond. Here's the devil's advocate position. What they would say is that
the devil's advocate.
They would say that George Tiller was as deserving of wrath as any one of us, because his sin of murdering fetuses
is as bad as yours.
Is as bad as my sin of
the other day in the shower.
Yeah, exactly. With coconut.
Yeah.
Tying all the show together.
You listen to the whole show?
Do you listen to the whole show? Okay. No. Coconut oil.
And in segments 4, 5, and 6 today, natural health coach Shelley Pagitt talked about the benefits of oil to the body.
Yes, did you?
And coconut oil is one of those. It's good inside and out at $54.
They would say, look, but the grace that's meted out by this God who burns in wrath against our sin is unmerited by an abortion doctor or the guy who murdered him.
Did you break any of the 10 Commandments, whether it was murdering or bearing false witness? Or
so what's interesting to me about that theology,
theology isn't it's calculating what's bad or worser. The issue is, how is that responded to by God, and therefore how should it be responded to by us? That's the question. And when you end with, to solve the problem, God murdered his son.
No, I'm with you. I think that theology breeds a kind of, Driscoll has been, in major media has been called, the Fight Club pastor, because it's that kind of, if a guy in the Acts 20, this is a quote, if a guy in the Acts 29 network allows a woman to preach in his church, I'm going to get on a plane, fly to where he is, and kick him in the throat.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to run into that guy.
Yeah.
With a 2x4.
I know, it's that kind of violent.
But they're going to say that, look, there are going to be two different things going on. One, the theological camp isn't really good. Everyone's just going to express their sorrow that
of course,
that there was violence. But they're also going to say, but look, the act of abortion is a fundamentally violent. But here's what's interesting about the guy.
Here's what's the question.
But what's interesting
is the violence that's done by humanity met with the violence of God on Jesus, or is there another story about how God met the violence of humanity with something else? This brought to you by the live occurrence of A Christianity Worth Believing, coming to 15 cities near you, where that very message will be proclaimed.
I don't think there's going to be a lot in the theological world around this. What I find interesting now is it's going to be watching everyone on the religious right who don't necessarily proclaim the theology, although I agree that same kind of theology is behind it.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But it's going to be Dobson, it's Operation Rescue, it's Beverly LaHaye, Tim LaHaye's wife, as Concerned Women for America or whatever. Yeah. They're all going to be distancing themselves from,
and they should,
and they're going to be on Bill O'Reilly tonight saying, abortion is murder. So this guy didn't have, maybe he was crazy, this alleged murderer of this guy. It seems pretty clear he did it, since he did it in front of a bunch of people, and they saw him get in his car and drive away and then caught him. But he doesn't have to be crazy. He simply has to be, when it comes to moral philosophy, a utilitarian.
Yes.
That's it.
He could be a vigilante.
I'm a utilitarian. I kill one guy, I go to jail for the rest of my life. Or, I don't know, in Kansas, do they have the death penalty? Maybe.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe he is. Maybe he'll even die for it. But then he would say, look, 2 deaths, but I'm saving thousands of more lives that this guy, on the idea that the women who would have gotten abortions, like there are people, and you and I have both met people in that camp of Christianity. They will say that the fact that Tiller's clinic in Wichita has closed for a week of mourning for this week and opens again next Monday.
Yes.
That in and of itself saves X number of lives.
Yes.
Because those babies won't be killed this week.
Yeah, for sure.
As though those women be given, because I've taken a youth group of my church a couple different times to abortion clinics that were being protested just to stand and watch. And the whole theory, what they're trying to do is to get a woman who's walking into the clinic to stop and go home, and maybe she won't come back tomorrow.
Right.
And they've saved a life. But
I heard an abortion doctor on the radio the other day, and she said that when she came into her clinic yesterday morning, she was met by the protesters who are there every day.
Yes, every day.
And they said to her, "Hey Jane, I'm really sorry." And she said, "Bill, I know these people are on first name basis.
Yeah.
Like abortion providers and protesters, they're in an actual conversation with each
what's
other
interesting
most of the time. They're not
no.
crazy people yelling things and throwing things and shooting at people."
And what's
That's
interesting,
another deal.
there are two other things that are, I think, interesting to watch this unfold as this week goes on, because this will be a major part of the news cycle in this week, right?
Yeah.
Is another thing is that the National Public Radio story on it noted that in 30 years, with all this, with stuff like this happening, this doctor has been shot before, you know, and the percentages in national polls on if you're pro-life or pro-choice have barely budged in 30 years. It's just pretty static.
Yeah.
The second thing is, of course, what Randall Terry and others are saying is that, you know, the Obama administration is going to use this moment to push more people to the pro-choice side and try to pass legislation, et cetera, et cetera. And it's going to come up